Hi, this is Dustin Hobbs, and welcome to Connect, the California Mortgage Bankers Association's monthly podcast featuring one-on-one interviews with headliners and movers and shakers in the mortgage banking industry. Today, I'm really excited. We've got Dr. Abraham Park from Pepperdine University here with us. Dr. Park, I've known Dr. Park for a number of years now, and he's been instrumental in helping us build and sustain our Future Leaders program. So I'm really excited to hear what his thoughts are on our industry and beyond in the financial markets, and what he thinks about the future of mortgage bankers, because he's seeing them all at Pepperdine here on a day-to-day basis. Before we get into that, though, I want to thank our sponsors at the Real Estate Services Trust. It's mid-2019 now, so we're about halfway through the year, and it's suspected to be a tougher year than I think it's been for some, but with unemployment at the rates that they're at, as an employer in the industry, you've got no choice but to make sure that you're doing what you can to attract and retain valuable employees. It should be a top priority for you. And from the California MBA's perspective, a competitive employee benefits package could be the solution that you're looking for. So we partnered with Marsh & McLennan Agency, a nationwide leading brokerage firm, to form the Real Estate Services Trust, or REST. The program provides real estate services employees competitive and affordable benefit plan options. And by delivering a quality benefit package, you can attract and retain those talented team of employees without exceeding your budget. You don't want to blow up your budget, and this will help you do that. So if you're an employer with 20 or more enrolled employees, you might be eligible to take advantage of large group purchasing power without being a large company. So to find out if that works for you, to find out if you're eligible, click on the link below or in the description and find out. All right, so let's get started here. Dr. Park, again, thank you for joining us here today on Connect. I'm really excited to have you on the program today. Like I said, I've known you for a couple of years now, and one of these things where I've always tried to figure out a way to get you more involved with our group and highlight you to the members. So really excited about it.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to speak with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, just a quick background on Dr. Park. He is the Associate Professor of Finance and Department Chair of Accounting, Finance, and Real Estate here at Pepperdine University. He's taught courses on real estate investments and finance and corporate finance at the MBA level, and his current research is related to REITs and corporate real estate. So he's right in our wheelhouse for sure. He's got over 12 years of experience in a variety of industries that includes law, Silicon Valley tech startup venture, management consulting, hedge funds, and global real estate finance. And he holds his PhD from University of Cambridge, his master's in philosophy from University of Cambridge, his JD from UC Berkeley, his master's in public policy from Harvard, and his BA from Berkeley. So I think more than qualified to talk about all the things that we want to talk about. So let's jump right in. So there's a lot to talk about in the industry and in the economy, where things are headed. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I always like to find out, what drew people to the places they're at, what got them into either the companies they're at, or in this case, the university here. So, Dr. Park, what's your background?
Well, thank you for the invitation once again. So, growing up in an immigrant family, I never thought that I would be an academic. So, after finishing studying economics and law at Berkeley, I practiced law for a little bit, but quickly transitioned to business and finance. And after having done that, I worked in Asia also, and then started working in London in real estate finance while doing my PhD there. And I was headed to the U.S. office of the firm that I was working in London, but then I was introduced to Pepperdine. Having become a Christian as a freshman in college, I always wanted to see if I can combine my passion for Christ and values and my education. And I did not know that much about Pepperdine, but after visiting Pepperdine, I thought this is a place that I can do both. And ever since I started, never looked back. So that's how I found myself in the academia. And then having worked and taught in a variety of areas in finance and law and real estate, I tend to gravitate towards real estate education for our new students especially, as I see a lot of opportunities in the real estate space for average students and people that I see for wealth creation and finding great opportunities for entrepreneurship there. So I end up gravitating towards real estate as something that I'm passionate about, something that I promote.
Awesome,
So, thank you.
Right on. So tell us, Dr. Park, what's in your view, what's the top story in the economy right now?
So for me, the top story in the economy is the trade war with China and also with Mexico. And just briefly, my view is that you don't start a trade war unless you have leverage. So, and I believe that U.S. as a nation has leverage, and there's not enough coverage in the news about that. And so I think that's probably the top news, and also the timing of the trade war, and perhaps when the tariff will be removed. The timing of that will be a really important thing for us to look out for as we go forward, because that's going to have a huge impact.
Huge, yeah. Well, and just for our listeners here, this is one of the problems with doing a monthly podcast and not a daily podcast. Mm-hmm. The news literally this morning was that it seems like there may be some movement between the U.S. and Mexico on tariffs. So by the time you're watching this, what we said may or may not, may have already come to fruition. So. Right. Let's look at the sort of the longer picture. Where do you see things going in the economy over the next 12 to 18 months or so?
Yes, I think, since the election is in 18 months, and America votes with the economy, and as much as the economy can be stimulated by the administration, I think there would be protection in the U.S. economy for the next 2 years for sure. And imagine with a lot of pressure on the Fed to lower the interest rates, and if they do end up lowering the interest rates, and if President Trump removes the tariff sort of in the early part of 2020, boom, I think there's going to be a huge growth in the economy going into the election. So my guess is that pretty positively that the U.S. economy will be okay as much as it can be stimulated and stirred by the administration. So I think we're good for the next few years.
Doesn't sound like a bad electoral strategy either.
Yes.
Let's look more at the business climate. I'm always curious to hear your thoughts on sort of the overall business climate, and particularly in California. Mm-hmm. We've got it's a high barrier to start a mortgage company in California in general, and specifically in California. So what are your thoughts on sort of where we're at business climate-wise?
Right. So the question is mortgage business a commodity or not? So it's difficult to have a sustainable business if you just if you're selling a commodity. So the key thing that I think is to really think strategically and hard about what is your differentiating value, so you're not just a simple commodity. And I think when you come down to it, you're going to have to embrace the changing digital economy, first of all, and then it's branding and customer service. So that's what needs to be embraced to make a differentiation for the value. So I think the focus has to be there, and not treat your business like a commodity. I think that will be the key.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, what would you say as far as what are those factors? What can be those characteristics of a business that are not necessarily it can't be commoditized? Mm-hmm. If I was starting a business, what should I look at as far as what can I build that can't be, taken away? Exactly.
So I think you're going to have to really embrace technology, first of all, and to create entries to barrier. But usually in this kind of a space, branding and customer service provides that differentiation. So the focus really has to be there in creating barriers there and sort of customer stickiness, especially for the younger generation that's coming up. So because unless you make a differentiation there, and they will, they'll see it as a commodity.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, the millennial generation now is the biggest home buying, cohort right now. So that's, you're right. We have to target them for sure. Mm-hmm. What about home building and affordability? What are your thoughts on where we're at with that? I mean, we hear public officials all the time talk about where we're at with affordability and the challenges there. I mean, do you see any reason to hope that that'll be improved in the next couple of years here in California?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think affordability and a lot of talk about that, it's a political issue more than anything. It can be relieved through changes in zoning, as LA downtown, as we saw what happened there. And so unless the zoning is a change, I think it's just going to be a lot of political talk. But I do hope that there will be some changes along those areas. for allowing for more denser population and housing in various places that need it.
Yeah.
So I think so. But other than politics aside, I think that will solve a lot more than just a few affordable homes here and there.
Well, the political challenge is a big one to get through, but
Yes.
You're right. I think that is the biggest challenge overall. So one of the biggest sort of factors in especially in what we've seen in the mortgage industry in the last couple of years, is there's been a ton of mergers and acquisitions, and the industry has really consolidated over the last 10 years or so. What are your thoughts on is that something we should see continuing in the next few years? And what about in other industries? Is this specific to us, or is it going on sort of overall in the economy?
I do see it overall in the economy, but M&A activities are usually quite cyclical, and when the economy is doing well, you're seeking either value or growth through M&A and portfolio diversification, as well as making a strategic move because of positioning you want to have in your industry. And I think at the moment, that is part of the big strategy that's embraced by the companies. But it is cyclical, so depending on the outlook in the economy and what's going to happen for the next couple of years, there will be changes. But I think it will continue. I see that as something that will continue to happen in all industries as well for the next few years.
Interesting. Okay. So what about so looking maybe a little more global now, what about international financial markets? What do you see as being maybe an underreported story or maybe the top story for you?
Yeah, recently I took a bunch of Pepperdine students to Oxford, and the big news in the UK is, of course, Brexit. And so we were able to take a poll before going to Oxford among the students what their view is on Brexit. And most of them were against Brexit. But among the speakers at Oxford we were able to hear from both sides of pro-Brexit versus those who want to leave, both in business, both in finance. And after hearing hearing both sides, and at the end we took another poll among the students, and most of them were convinced to be pro-Brexit.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, so I think the interesting part is just there's a reporting. Maybe there's underreporting in the reasons for that, for not only UK, but perhaps sort of national independence and sort of anti-globalism would be bad for your economy. And that's not necessarily true. And so I think that's something that global trips can also give you in terms of different kind of perspectives. So I think we see one side, but we were all grateful to hear from both sides. And there is good reasons for that. So something like that would be, I think I see as an underreporting.
So looking at Brexit specifically, is that something that, I mean, the anti-Brexit folks would say that if they leave the EU, or at least economically, that it's going to be a crushing blow to the economy. I mean, but maybe not. So what's your thought on that?
Yes, it's interesting to see that if you look at who's pro versus who's wants to remain, and it's not just a matter of the liberals versus conservatives. It's both sides that also support and are against leaving, and it's purely based on which economic sector derives most of its business from Europe or other parts of the world, and that's what's splitting the division there. I think the important part is that a lot of all the trades that go to the UK, it has to go through the EU, and that does not allow the UK to make negotiations with countries on their own that might be beneficial to them. So the key would be if they were to have a Brexit, which is going to take a while to unwind that thing, even if that were to happen. The key is whether they can form alliances directly with the US and also Asia, and if that can be done, the impact won't be as much as people believe. So, but it's going as you know, it's going to be a long process to see how that comes out to be. But there's general movement for a lot of different countries as well, wanting certain independence So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Was it? I'm just one more thought on Brexit. This is very fascinating to me, and someone who's totally removed and only catching headlines here and there on Brexit, because it hasn't been as covered probably as well as it should have been in our press. Is that something that the average person in Britain, when you guys went there in England, is that something that they understand that when we do this, it's going to take it's going to be a long process, or is that something that I know in America when we vote on things, sometimes we expect that change will happen instantly, and it rarely does. Is that something? How do they take that?
Yeah, I do think they think it's going to take a while, but a lot of the people who are millennials, they've only experienced living in an EU community, so they don't know what it's going to be like to be separate from that.
Fear of the
and
unknown.
So there's a lot of the fear of the unknown, plus not understanding how long it might take. So there's certain unknown and uncertainties about that, but they do know that things take a long time in the UK. So
yeah, well, they've been around for a while enough. So our sense of a long time is not necessarily what they would consider a long time. So getting back to maybe some more local here,
Sure.
Actually as local as it gets here at Pepperdine. We're on the campus right now. We've been, like I said, we've been very proud to have been partnering with you and the school here for the last few years with our Future Leaders program, and it's really added to the program and made it, a big success. So I'm curious, you're dealing with the quote future leaders of of our industry and every industry every day. What's your thought on the next generation of business leaders?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think there are certain personal traits and certain tendencies we see at our schools. A lot of the younger population, as I notice, they are a lot freer, and they're freer to explore, and they want to find more meaning in their work, and they're seeking for something that they can believe in. And because of some of these natural tendencies and characteristics of the younger generation, what they are interested in when they come to Pepperdine Business School is oftentimes entrepreneurship. And they don't necessarily want to belong to a big organization and stay there for a long time like my generation was.
They don't want the gold watch.
They want their own freedom to explore their individual gifts and talents. And so they are very interested in entrepreneurship, and they're interested in values. And as Pepperdine Business School, we really emphasize the importance of values and ethics, and what kind of values are you bringing to the world. And those tend to ring true for a lot of the younger population. So I noticed that. I think that's exciting as the world is changing so fast. And the key is, can you sort of embrace the digital economy? Do you have digital intelligence? Do you have emotional intelligence, financial intelligence, global intelligence? And I think those are some of the 4 factors that we like to embrace at our school to meet the needs for our students. And also, when the economy is doing well, a lot of the young people don't choose to go to MBA because they have a job and they don't want to lose a job. So there's a general decline in the trend of MBA, but also sort of changing what should be taught at business schools as well. So we're going through a lot of redesign, but exciting redesign to actually bring industries into school a lot more. So it's not just an academic course, but a real applied experience.
More practical.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing now, and I look forward to see a lot of the exciting changes that are here as well.
That's interesting. Well, and it is very curious to me, the sort of the outlook of millennials, and now we're talking even Gen Z, that they're very entrepreneurial. It's very interesting because on one side, from the mortgage and real estate level, there's been a lot of angst over the last few years about especially millennials, when are they going to get into the market, when are they going to start, and there's been a lot of thought that there's some major hesitancy on their part and caution. But you're telling me, they're also very interested in starting their own business, and there's no more high risk move than that.
Yes.
So that's very interesting that they sort of, they do have a appetite for some risk.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and I think because of that, generally they'll have a less stable income, and they expect to have less stable income when they are becoming entrepreneurs, and so the tendency is to kind of delay their home purchases, but at the same time they should be able to see the importance of real estate for them and for homes, and what real estate means, especially when our nation has a growing debt. Basically the only way to handle current economy is, unless the GDP is growing faster than the rate at which our national debt is growing, there's going to be inflation. And how do you protect against that? And you need real estate, and I think they are willing to see that, and that's something that I educate here for the millennials especially. And you need time, especially in the area of real estate, to build wealth, to preserve wealth in hard assets. So that is something that I see as wisdom that our young generation needs, even if they are who they are. So I hope they see that.
Right on. So then I guess let's this is sort of usually we ask a millennial question, but I'm curious. I mean, since you're dealing with not only millennials, you're dealing now with Generation Z, and that's just starting to sort of bubble up in mortgage industry conferences, and as they reach that, they're in their barely into their 20s here. So are you seeing any difference in generation between Gen Z and millennials, or what's your thought on that?
So I have both in my family. So millennial and Gen Z, there seems to be a clear difference. Gen Z's, millennials really embrace a lot of online, and they're really used to doing a lot of online purchases. And Gen Z, on the other hand, seems to be gravitating more towards experience. So when they encounter somebody face to face, or when there is a contact, that matters to them a lot more. And rather than branding, also they are interested in authenticity and sort of individualism a lot more for Gen Z. And so as we see that trend happening more and more, I think businesses we're gonna have to go more than just targeting millennial trends. It's probably more important to focus on how Gen Zs are turning to be different than the millennials as a generation of people who never understood war, or what it means to have conflicts, and where they are finding their sort of source of purpose and individuality from. And I think they're looking for something to believe in, and also at the same time they want freedom and individuality. So that's something to think about, and and sort of embracing of the digital economy and the automation will be more pronounced in Gen Z generation. So that's something that as a school we emphasize for education, as well as most businesses. If they're too slow in that area, maybe they're too slow for the big wave to come pretty soon.
Yeah, it's interesting. That sounds like there's while there's many mortgage companies that are still trying to adapt to millennials. It's almost like they need to already start adapting to Gen Z.
Z.
Absolutely.
So it's something true for us as well. We are, as an institution, we're trying to adopt online education. But perhaps even before we are fully online education, the Gen Zs are different. They might be mobile education. So it's important to pay attention to the different characteristics of the Gen Z. Right. They're different from millennials for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll check in with you here in a couple of years and find out what the update is. So, Dr. Park,
thank you so much,
Thank
Justin,
you
for the opportunity.
Yeah. All right. And we'll catch you next time on Connect.